How does a country of 1.4 billion people achieve effective governance? As China continues to refine its governance practices, what lessons can other developing countries draw from its experiences? While China does not seek to export its political system, governments from developing countries are increasingly eager to learn from China. With China and Africa together accounting for 1/3 of the world's population, how are the two sides stepping up leadership training and capacity building exchange programs? I was pleased to be joined in Shanghai by Busani Ngcaweni, Principal of the National School of Government of South Africa and Senior Research Associate at the University of Johannesburg. Do you see a shift in the past few decades, I would say, of the realization that there is something to be learned from China's experience? Because in the past, everybody kind of looked west, to the Western countries, to the more developed models and tried to learn from there. But do you think there is growing recognition that China actually has found some kind of, the golden formula? I don't know how you describe that, but there is a need to learn more while you're learning from other good practices in terms of governance as well.
There's few things that they are, learning and they are pursuing. The first one is that you need strong, dynamic state capacity. It's consistent from Singapore to Beijing to Seoul. It is consistent that is what you require. You need to set very clear national priorities for what you want to achieve. If you want to build an auto sector, that is your strategy, you must then look at the resources and the capabilities for doing so. It will take time, but you evolve it. So those are the patterns of history that are being studied by countries in Africa, by countries in the global south. Also, most importantly, also, there's a question of, so where will money come from, right? And so the question is, how do you look at different mechanisms for raising capital to deploy in infrastructure development and other industrialization programs? We are learning, of course. We've seen what they've done elsewhere, elsewhere in the world, but we are learning that, in fact, you could dynamically engage the private sector differently to raise capital, either through giving concessions or through build, operate, and transfer. And in fact, the interesting thing now is that there are more funding sources available other than the traditional, IMF and World Bank type of facilities.
You have to be innovative.
You have to be innovative. But I must stress something that people, mistake, criticism from critique. I mean, especially with the BIR and all of those. When you build these dynamic state capabilities in the global south, you also sharpen the ability of leaders, of civil servants to negotiate good contracts. Because in some
good contracts.
Good contract, yeah. Good contract, good terms and conditions. Because in some instances, the criticism will emerge as a result of people writing contracts that may not be favorable. So you must build this capacity to negotiate and say, here is a project. We're going to be spending $1 billion on this project. It's a corridor of trade. These are the social and economic benefits of this project. However, let's get to discuss the terms and conditions of those, so that there is there's a mutual understanding.
Yeah.
It is transparent, because by doing so, you raise the legitimacy of what we are trying to do. Hence, this idea of building the capacity of the state.
I have two more questions. One is the criticism that China, or the suspicion that China is eager to export its political system, its ideology. This is the first. And second, what can China potentially learn from its African counterparts in terms of your traditions, what you can offer, because it's about mutual learning. I don't think it's a one-way street. So what do you say to these two? Let's start with the first one. Yeah.
Well, I mean, in my short understanding of communist parties, I think the CPC is not internationalist in the same manner in which the Communist Party of the Soviet Union was. Because during that era, the Soviet Union was expanding and building communist parties across the world. Of course, it was during the Cold War, and so there was
building a camp.
They were building a particular camp, and there was an investment in building that type of a system globally. And of course, there was a counter, a counter from the West. I have not personally, even although the CPC interacts with political parties, I have not personally experienced the CPC trying to build little CPCs around the world,
or trying to convert you.
That is not my experience. What I have seen is that what I call China's dead opening up. That's what I call it. China is going through a dead opening up.
What do you mean by that?
Dead
opening
Number
up.
Three.
Oh, third.
1, 2, 3. First,
Third.
second, and third. Yeah.
Third opening up.
Yeah. So the first opening up will have been 78. The second opening up will be joining WTO. And now, like a post-pandemic China, I think is going through a dead opening up. In a sense that China is humble enough to say, you can learn from our model, you adapt what you wish to adapt from it, but we are not imposing it from you. For a very long time, China was very close. This was like, our model is unique, it's got Chinese characteristics, you can't copy from us. And I always said, they can't say that. They learned from Singapore and Japan and South Korea.
Did.
They learned from Japan at the time when there were sharp contradictions between the two countries, but they were learning
And we learned
something.
from the United States as well. Our
We learned from the
university
US,
principals
from
go to
Europe.
the US.
Exactly, right? They were all over in Europe, in the US, and so on, and they were able to adapt it to local conditions. So now there's a recognition that, in fact, development is a function of mutual learning. Of course, you adapt to your own conditions and so on, but models, just like cars can be adapted, and you can even do better than those who have learned to manufacture cars from. But there are those things that are consistent in the model of success, which is regardless of the path you take, if you don't have the capacity to diligently execute it, you will fail. That is an important lesson. And so in this opening up that I'm talking about, and the manner in which some of those exchange programs also are being created, I think there is a major shift. In the past, people will come and go and enjoy city life, scenic routes, high-speed rail, and so on. Those people who are coming here on exchanging are spending a lot more time in the classroom now. So like it's real learning, understanding the model, unpacking the design and the architecture of some of those key interventions, as opposed to enjoying the Great Wall and the train and so on. So that is remarkable. That's my observation.
They're serious about.
And most of the students that I send here, this is the type of feedback that they are giving us back, that they are now actually in the engine room, so to speak, and they have an understanding of what was the theory behind this program, how it was designed, how it was implemented, and how it was managed, including the financing arrangement. So that's part of the shift that I'm seeing. Many others too. The reason you've got Western scholars and Western students here is because they are also learning is how they were able to make some of these significant leaps, because that's how knowledge works. The problem is only if there is an idea that there is knowledge that is universal, therefore everybody must implement it. Because knowledge is pluriversal, right? So we learn from each other, we influence each other culturally and so on. I'm interested as a South African to influence, Chinese culture. It is in my best interest that we do so. And in fact, the reason why the Chinese market is embracing South African agriculture, products, it means we are having an influence, because in the dinner tables in the People's Republic of China, we are most likely going to have something that is made and farmed in South Africa, as much as on the streets of Johannesburg, we are most likely going to find someone driving a Chinese automobile. 10 years ago, it was unthinkable to do so because we didn't trust them. They were poor quality. You wouldn't use your family money to buy a Chinese automobile. Today, they are part of the top 10 fast-selling brand new vehicles. And here in mainland, in Hong Kong and in Taiwan, there's a growing number of the Chinese who are enjoying South African made agriculture product. The red meat market has opened up, the avocado is opening up, and several other forms of agriculture products, some of which are already processed at home before they are exported here.
So is this part of the other direction of the traffic? I was asking you about what are we learning, what can we learn potentially from our South Africa in terms of governance, in terms of how you run your society?
Well, the direction is both ways. There are Chinese firms in South Africa that are learning how to work in a different environment, especially in the South African environment. You can be a major state-owned enterprise from Beijing. You win a contract to build a road in South Africa. You will not build that road as if you are building it in China.
No.
The local communities must have a stake in the project. They must participate as a percentage of the road work that must go into the local community. You must build skills there. There has to be some form of local procurement and local participation. There is even a quota for the number of women who must work in those projects. If you don't do that, we are not meeting the terms and conditions of the contract. And they are learning. They are learning that this is how things are done, which is important because for all multinational corporations, you have to learn and adapt to the local laws, to the local conditions. It increases legitimacy, of the project, as well as, the welfare of the people who are working on the project. So there is a learning, and I'm confident that they are learning and learning very fast, and it is happening, in both ways. Here in China, we have so many young girls here who are teaching English, right? And they want to be here. Many of them want to come here and teach English as much as in South Africa, because South Africans were also learning Mandarin, because people are taking a long-term view that by learning language, by learning culture, there is much more economic opportunity that may come about in the future.